Hello, right, today's video is something a little bit different in that it's a bit of an experimental one. Going to be having a bit of a further play around with this. It's for Mantis Hobbies and Models, and it gives a bubbling rust effect. Now I picked this up as I always love a good weathering technique, and I thought this one was a bit different in that you apply it on, then paint over the whole thing, and then pick the paint off to give the layer of rust underneath. Now I have had a bit of a little play around with this on just a crate, and if you can see there, it works really quite well. So literally just painted, undercoated rather, stippled it on to the layers, and then as soon as it dried, just slap some paint over the top and pick it off. It looks really good, I think, although it needs a little bit more experimentation, and this is what we're going to hope to achieve today. For this, I've just got a container that I've pre-built and just sprayed a sort of bone sand colour just to give a nice light undercoat when we actually go over it with the yellow. And I'm going to really try and distress this quite a lot, sticking to sort of key areas like in the depths between the pillars, and I'm going to be chipping bits off the actual plastic and trying to fill it with the product, so then when we go over it with the paint, you can peel that off and you get this bit more of a sense of depth with the rust effect. Like a lot of products that I've seen, you apply it on and it builds the layers up. Well, I'm hoping with this will take the layer down and give that bit more of a 3D depth. So without waffling on too much more, I'll get going. So I'll put this to one side. So we've got this just as standard, and now I'm going to start just chipping bits off and drilling holes and things in it too. So I'll just start taking bits out. A few bits looking like that. I'll take some areas out, so I'm going to do this on the rest of the container, and then we'll come back just before I start applying the product itself. Okay, so I've just done some more gouging, so slightly bigger holes, a nice big one at the bottom so you can fill that in. On the top, nothing on that end. I'm going to try something a little bit different with that. The holes you saw me do, a couple of bits on top, and just a nice little scuff on this end. So now I've got all that, I'm gonna put on the product. So I've just got a cheap lid. This paint is textured, so we'll give it a bit of a shake. I'll just squirt a blob on here. So I've got a nice old brush. It's quite watery, as you can see. And then it says to stipple it on, so if we do it here like this, like I'm not just going to do the whole areas, but I thought I'd start with those. We'll put them all around the bottom like that. We'll fill that in too. We'll look at these. And it looks like we should do it quite nicely, I think, if we're a bit careful. I'll start putting some in the corners where rust will accumulate. Put some down there. Got a little one at the bottom down here too, so I'll just plug that up. Spread it around like that. I really could be here for hours doing this, and sure, if you're watching this video, you watch enough paint dry, so you don't want to watch me. So I'll carry on doing this, and we'll come back when it's all dry. Okay, so we're just about there with the drying. Still a little bit wet in the bottom, so I'll give it another 10 minutes maybe, but as you can see, it's done quite well. It's actually filled in all the gaps. It has taken a couple of coats, and there's a little divot where the hole is, but it has filled the majority of those in. It won't matter so much because we are going to sort of pick the paints off to reveal that rusty effect underneath. One thing I did discover while trying to do this, don't try and rapid dry it, as it will flake off. I put mine next to a little heater just to try and speed it up the process somewhat, and it's taken that little bit more, as if you can see there on the edge. And there are lots of other places I've had to sort of peel off. I over dried it, so please let this dry naturally if you're going to use it. But other than that, I think it looks great and it's come out really well. So next step now is just to paint this yellow, so it's a nice contrast to the brown, I think. And then we'll have the fun bit and start peeling it off. So this is the interesting point, and probably the most tricky as well. You need a sharp point to start scratching the top layer off. I've already done one side as a practice, just to try and work through it all, but I'll show you the second side. I had sort of a rounded point rather than like a spear point, and I'll just work through, taking it off as gently as I can. You can very easily go through the plastic, which I have done quite a bit on this one, but I just topped it up with a little bit of this product again, and it seems to fix it up fine. You'll also notice that this isn't yellow. I had to repaint this again, as when I was doing it with the yellow paint, it mostly flaked off when I was spraying it on. So I reapplied the product with a thicker coat this time and put red over the top, and I knew it would seal it in nicely. So with that disaster averted, I continued with this. Just take your time, be gentle with it, and try not to scratch off too much paint. It does take quite a bit of time to do, but I really think it's worth it, and you will get some good results out of it. So as you can see, I've finished chipping it all off, and it looks rather nice. Now, I have also discovered that if you water it down in a ratio of about 3 or 4 to 1 and wash it over the top, it'll give you a nice textured wash. It'll do a really subtle, I'll say subtle, sort of stained water effect if you leave it long enough, or try and rapid heat it, which I did with this. I've also applied just a little bit of dirty down just to a few specific areas, just to bring a bit more kind of colour variation to it, but overall I think it looks pretty good. It looks very old, very worn, very abandoned, very industrial, so I'm really happy. So what I'll do now is I'll go finish this off. I'll do all the silver bits, extra bits and bobs, and I'll come back and you can have a look at the finished thing. So here's the finished thing. I really like how this has come out. I just picked out certain areas with a brown texture paint, and then went over it with a quick dry brush of Rise of Rust, and then some silver on top of that when it just about dried. I really like this effect. Usually with weathering you go for lots of rust streaks, dark deposits in the corner, which I've kind of gone for a little bit for with the product, but it's more of an abandoned car look, abandoned tractor look, like it's been sat in a warehouse for years. The rust is slowly eating away at it. It's not been out of the elements, but there's been a massive deposit of dust on top. So just two things to mention when using this. You do need quite a thick coat, otherwise you do take off down to the bottom layer. I'll also shout out to having a really good primer as well. It's half the issue I had with this when I was actually trying to do it, was that it was peeling off because it hadn't stuck properly. As soon as it goes over a proper coat of paint, it will stick fine. Really very pleased with this. I think it's a great little product to have a play around with. I'll get some close-ups of this and some nice like beauty shots and whatnot after I finish waffling on. But seriously, if you fancy something a bit different, give this a try. I'll be using this in my arsenal quite a lot from now on, especially on terrain, because I think it gives a lovely effect when you chip it off and you get a nice thick layer, and you can see the bubbling underneath and the paint's come off, and it just gives it that bit of extra. So I would highly recommend this. So that is all for today. I'll put some nice pictures up in a second. If you liked what you just watched, please feel free to comment and subscribe below, and hopefully you found this useful, and I will talk to you soon. Bye bye for now.